All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Burkhard Mausberg. I'm the president of the Small Change Fund, and thank you so much for joining us for this webinar on how free transit for youth can make a tremendous difference in our local communities. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that this land on which I live, work, and play has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, I am in this meeting in a place that many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island still call home, and I'm grateful to be able to have the opportunity to live, play, and eat here. A quick background on who the Small Change Fund is. We were set up in 2008 as Canada's first crowdfunding platform. We were set up to help people and organizations improve the environment, reduce poverty, and support reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. We have vastly expanded our services in supporting folks across the country with their work. Yes, our award-winning crowdfunding platform is still the center of what we provide, but now we have expanded, providing leadership on communications, campaign planning, government relations, and fundraising. In sum, our work amplifies the impact of our 120 plus partners across the country. I'd like to let you know that we're recording this webinar. There were some folks that couldn't attend but wanted to see it, so we're recording that. And as well, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please make sure you put that in the chat and we will address all the questions, or as many as we can, towards the end of the webinar. With that, I want to introduce Dan Hendry. Dan is from Kingston, and he is really the brainchild of how to make this work, this free transit for youth program work in Kingston, and he will take us through today's webinar. Dan.
Thank you, Burkhard. As Burkhard said, my name is Dan Hendry, and I've been actively involved in Kingston Transit youth programs for the past decade. I can tell you I had more hair at the start, but I appreciate what we've been doing. Over the years, I've witnessed this initiative's remarkable growth and impact on our community. I've had the privilege to communicate and share our story, but really, you see it all the time in the community, in the schools, in students, for parents, local employers. And though I'm a storyteller and I get to share that, that is actually how I came to meet Burkhard and the Small Change Fund. At a time, I was overwhelmed with interest we were gathering, but I was unsure how to take the next step. And that's when I reached out to the Small Change Fund, and together we secured a grant from a foundation that allowed us to continue this important work for the next 3 years. With that in mind, I'd like to explain why we're gathered here today. We're here because the significant developments taking place in Kingston and other communities across Canada, and to create a shared vision for the future. With that being said, I'm pleased to introduce our distinguished first speaker, Ariane Parent, the Executive Director of the Climate Reality Project Canada. Ariane will highlight how investing in youth transit programs can have a positive impact for the climate, and additionally, they will present a clip from the Climate Reality Project International by Al Gore, showcasing the Kingston program, providing further context and inspiration behind the Get on the Bus initiative. Thank you, Ariane.
Thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone. Canada is committed to reducing national green gas emission by at least 40% below 2005 levels by 2030, en route to net zero by 2050. As the second largest source of emission behind oil and gas, reducing emissions from the transportation sector is absolutely essential to achieving Canada's 2030 climate target. Yet, without significant improvement in emission intensity, energy efficiency, and decarbonization driven by effective policy, Canada will struggle to meet this critical target. As we work to cut the 11% of its emissions that come from passenger transportation, all levels of government should lean on the significant potential of public transportation. Transit systems are already helping reduce Canada's emission. Efficient, effective, affordable public transit cuts pollution, automobiles congestion, commuter times, and greenhouse gas emission. Because buses, trams, and subways move more people and use less space than private vehicles, they also reduce traffic and congestion, avoiding an estimated 4.7 megaton of emission per year and simultaneously contributing to cleaner air. A Canadian Climate Institute analysis shows that public transit could drive a further 8 megaton in reduction by 2030, exceeding the emission reduced by electrifying personal vehicle that year. In addition, providing safe, frequent, and accessible public transportation improves opportunities for all income levels. According to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Canadian household can save annually $10,000 by taking public transportation. But how do we make it happen? How do we get actually people on the bus? In North America, we're in a very challenging context. Single-use vehicles have been marketed as a symbol of freedom, wealth, and even happiness, while misleading ads have portrayed public transportation as uncomfortable, unreliable, which can be true without adequate funding, and even dangerous. Now we're confronted to greenwashing communication campaign associating single-use vehicle as a climate solution that can even save turtles. There is a huge cultural shift that is necessary to be able to tap into the economic, environmental, and social equity potential of public transit. Since accessibility is so important for attracting people to public transit, it's crucial that public transportation system have sufficient operational funding for frequent, convenient, and safe service. Reliable, affordable, zero-emitting public transportation is truly a collective project involving all levels of government. If we look at municipalities, they have more room to innovate. For instance, some cities have experimented with free fare transit as a way to keep system affordable. This is the example with Kingston, but as well as Victoria, and even part of Calgary's Sea Train. While this is very positive, true accessibility is not only providing free access to free fare, but also by breaking the multiple other barriers that may prevent users from getting on the bus. And that's the challenge and paradigm shift that the Kingston program really innovates in and has succeeded by breaking the barriers on how to ride the bus, making the experience less intimidating and truly accessible. Thanks to the program, more youth are consistently year after year gaining confidence and independence. Youth are also gaining more experiential learning opportunities in the school system thanks to the field trips pass. Free access to public transportation combined with adequate youth training is not only a sound climate solution, but also a catalyst for positive social change. Youth have the power to influence their family's behavior, like we've seen with recycling, encouraging a domestic shift towards responsible transportation habits. By advocating for proper funding, accessibility, reliability, and quality, youth can shape the future of transportation policies, and we should help them in doing so. Youth are the drivers of change, and their action and future votes will position us for systemic change in the present and in the long run. The Kingston model for youth transit programming has been recognized globally as an inspiring example for zero-emission transportation. It was indeed chosen amongst thousands of actionable stories from over 174 countries, and even Al Gore himself, our founder, has praised it. The success of the Kingston model should motivate and inspire many more communities to embrace sustainable transit solution propelled by youth empowerment. Together, we can create a future where public transit is accessible to all, reduces emissions, and foster a more sustainable, healthy, and equitable society. So now I invite you all to get on the bus and watch the famous video.
Public transit deserves to be at the center of our communities. But there's a problem. For years, it's been stigmatized and we built around the automobile. But more importantly, people aren't using it. You need people for good public transit, but you need good public transit for people. And that's what we set out to change. When local politicians realized that there'd be an opportunity to give grade 9s free access to the buses, we decided, well, we should train them, we should teach them. And we created the Kingston Transit Bus Pass program, in which all grade 9 students get trained on a moving bus, and now grade 9, 10, 11, 12 ride for free. What has that done? Well, the first year there were 28,000 rides. There's now almost 600,000 rides by high school students in our community. Like any program, there were challenges, but we listened, and that's the key. We paid attention to students, teachers, principals, parents, politicians, transit operators, and every year we listened and we built the program better to satisfy what we're trying to do, which is grow ridership and get students comfortable on the bus. So it's a great opportunity to talk to students about etiquette, being in a public place, safety, but really it's about building their confidence and understanding and building a community around using transit. One thing I tell students is, I'm not just giving you a bus pass today, I'm giving you freedom. And that really resonates with students. Getting to school, jobs, I say first dates or volunteering, it opens up and creates a more accessible community.
I got this bus pass for free and it changed my life.
My hopes and dreams for the Kingston Transit High School Bus Pass program is one more community, and then one more community, all over the world. When you engage youth, you actually engage the whole community and opening their door to bettering the transit system. Using public transit, we are the solution.
Thank you so much, Aurélien. It was such a privilege to be able to participate in that video, but thanks again for taking the time today to share from the climate perspective. And next we have Wei Mason, a community leader, entrepreneur, educator, and Halifax regional councillor. Wei will introduce the Student Transit Pass pilot in Halifax and discuss the region's inspiration for the program and the benefits we hope to see from it. Wei?
Hey there, I'm going to just dive right in. I'm Councillor District 7, Halifax South Downtown, and I'm a lifelong transit user. I've been taking the bus by myself since I was 12. So next slide, please. In Halifax, just for context, bus fare is $2.75, and youth 13 to 17 is $2. We've been growing the base of our annual passes for some time. The first, like Kingston, it sounds like, was the University Pass program, which started in 2010. We have 7 degree granting institutions and 3 large community colleges. So we have a daytime student population of 32,000. Most of those post-secondary schools are in my district. So getting people out of cars and into buses when they're coming into the schools was really important. That's been very successful. All those institutions are on board, and just a couple of years ago we extended it to summer class as well. $169 a year, 80 half that during the summer. We also have an employment pass program, which has really struggled since COVID. That launched in 2012. It's a 25% discount, which the employer pays half that discount. And we've just started to get to a place where large institutional employers like Nova Scotia Health have just joined. Our goal is to get that to 4,000 in the next 18 months. Slide. So what drove us to talk about student passes was actually coming at it from a different direction. It was the United Way poverty report about 4 years ago. And one of the immediate needs that needed to be addressed was transportation for low-income people. And it called for seniors and youth under 18 to ride public transit for free and to provide a low-income bus pass. And this put a firm social justice and equity lens on our program decisions going forward. Slide, please. So the first thing we did is we launched an affordable access transit pass program as a part of a suite of affordable programs that came out of the United Way. So you apply once, you get discounted recreation, you get a deeply discounted bus pass, and you get tax relief for low-income homeowners. Next slide, please. And then we did similar to Kingston. We offered a free bus program for, this is before that, we did the income assistance. We managed to cut a deal with the province community services that the families and recipients of income assistance, which some provinces call social assistance, would all be able to access a bus pass. And the province pays the city $25 a month for that. And that opened up bus passes to 16,800 people who are in that low income frame. Next slide, please. And then we did like Kingston. We did a kids under 12 ride free in our case, and kids under 2 always rode free. But now 56,000 kids have free access to the bus. Part of our goal, just like Kingston, is to create a lifetime habit of users on transit, make it something to grow up with that just becomes a part of their life. Next slide, please. Now we get into the PASS program. So once we had 12 and under going in 2019, we identified the next step was junior high and high school kids. And in general, a high school kid is grade 10 to 12 here, and junior high is grade 7 to 9. In the case of the student pass, we'd hope to partner with school boards and with schools to find a way to have less school buses on the road and expand the existing ticket programs or pass programs for students. But to go beyond giving them tickets to get to school, give them, like Kingston, unlimited access to transit all the time, give them the freedom that Dan talked about. So this was delayed, of course, because of COVID, but it finally launched in May 2001. We approved it at council. The student transit pass was issued that first year in September. It's just a sticker that we put on the photo ID they all get when they do their photo IDs anyway. School staff are responsible for that administration. Originally, our staff were really worried about overloads on buses, so they said we should just do one grade at each school. We were doing 2 of the 14 high schools in Halifax, and council said, no, do them all, do all the grades. So we did grade 10 to 12, and the revenue loss or cost to that was between $72,000 and $108,000. Unsurprisingly, based on what you heard from the Kingston presentation, 99% of the students took the sticker. 2,400 stickers went out. Next slide, please. So phase 2 of the program was approved by council in November 2022. This extended the program to junior highs and families of schools. Part of what we're trying to do is make it so that the Halifax Regional Center for Education, the school board, can have less school buses on the road and save money that they would pay instead into the transit system. What we heard from them is if it's just high school students, the way the routes work is the same buses are going through the same neighborhood picking up for high school and junior high. So we had high school kids on the public transit system, and they still had the same number of buses going into the neighborhoods. So phase 2 was we extended it to all the junior highs in each of those 2 families of schools. Same as phase 1, we found that about 95% of them took the sticker. We believe, though we don't have pay by tap, so we can't track the data that well, that it's significant use, even in the grade 7, 8, 9 range. And at this point now, the school board is paying $200,000 of the estimated $320,000 cost of doing this. So 1,700 more students went on in the area junior highs. We're going to come back in the fall with a recommendation, and I expect we will roll this out pretty quickly to all of the schools in the English school system. The private schools and French schools could be more problematic. The cost sharing is less clear. The French schools are often from, you call it kindergarten, we call it primary, all the way to grade 12. And so their buses are going to have to roll anyway. They may not have the savings, but we're working on that. I have no doubt that council will vote to expand this program. Slide, please. Problems do happen, overloads happen, and we're rolling with it. It's hard to change a bus system. It takes, they only pick routes every 3 months. It takes 18 months to buy a new bus. We all have labor shortages because of COVID. So it's hard to lay on extra resources. The school in this article, Citadel School, isn't even in the pilot program, but they're having huge overloads right now because more and more kids just in the last 3 years students have decided to take the bus. They're probably going to be in the pilot next year. We're trying to make sure we have more resources there when that happens. Another complaint we heard, which isn't on the slide, was as you roll it out piecemeal like this, you have some blended families where one kid is at a school that has a pass and another student is at a school that doesn't, and that causes some friction and jealousy. Of course, that'll solve itself over time. Next slide, please. And finally, we have a weird thing happening, which I think is really unfortunate. Across the country, we're seeing violence against bus operators in pretty much every major city. The transit union in Halifax has blamed the 12 and under riding free as creating an opportunity for people to get on the bus and cause disruption and in some cases violence against the operator. I would say correlation is not causation. This is happening across the country and it's a horrible thing and it needs to be addressed, but it's happening in plenty of places that don't have kids ride free programs and don't have student passes. So we're trying to work through that with the union, but it's in the news all the time here. So I'll just close by saying we are getting there between free rides, moderate and deeply subsidized passes, and expanding the school program. We could get to a place where we have 135,000 system passes out there, or people who can ride for free because of their age, out of a population of 480,000. That's a quarter of the city. And I think that's really exciting. Keep in mind that part of our big goal is to get large institutional people paying the deeply discounted pass as well. The next step we think will probably be a seniors pass for off-peak use. So thank you very much, and looking forward to the rest of the discussion.
Wei, thank you for taking the time and sharing from Halifax. Now over to Belleville. Sean Pudlis is the Experiential Learning Coordinator at the Hastings and Prince Edward District School Board and will present on the value the school board sees in investing in youth transit and why they're making a move to do so now. And by the way, we just received word that Belleville included free transit for youth in a recent budget and will be starting in the fall of 2023. So Sean, please take it over.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me. So as Dan mentioned, we're kind of in the early stages of rolling out a similar program to Kingston. For those of you that don't know, Kingston is really our neighbor. So I'm in the position where working in a central board role within the school board. I'm hearing great things about our neighbors, and we're kind of going, well, why can't we do that? So I've been really fortunate to connect with Dan and learn about the program. and then understand how this works and really to dive in to better understand how it will impact our students. So I don't have any fancy slides. I'm going to kind of talk from the cuff, but just kind of give you some perspective from my point of view. My role with the board is experiential learning coordinator. So I handle everything in terms of student experience. My main focus is co-op education and the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, as well as specialist high schools major programs for those of you that might know what that is. Obviously, first and foremost, the opportunities that public transportation provides for our students for field trips and special events, right? We've heard from other speakers so far about that equitable access for our students to get around the city and, not have to rely on the yellow bus to get them somewhere. So that's really intriguing for us as a school board that's actively trying to save dollars and provide valuable experiences for our students still without having to spend so much money on transportation for them to access that. There, you're reducing cost. The one thing that I think is really important too, that started to resonate with me the more I met with Dan and had conversations, is that, providing a free transit pass for students provides teachers with a teachable moment for our students. We are very much a rural board. Belleville is a small town, 56,000 people. And, the majority of our schools lie outside of, that city where our transit is actually available, but a lot of students may be bused in the school or to their school. And that teachable moment is really about helping our students understand sustainability and that environmental impact, because living in a rural community, we really perpetuate that single vehicle for everybody. You drive to wherever you need to go to, whether that's a hockey game at night after school, or, maybe you go to a special program at a school that doesn't offer busing from your home. So we have quite a few parents that are driving their children to different schools throughout our district for whatever reason. So great opportunity for our students to access and learn about sustainability from that perspective. I mentioned co-op and OYAP, so Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program for other provinces that don't know. It's an opportunity for our students to practice in a skilled trade and potentially be signed as apprentices through their high school experience. That comes with funding through the Ministry of Labor for transportation, and what the Bus Pass program could help us reallocate some of those funds. So rather than giving mileage to a student that's driving a big diesel truck to their placement every day, I can help support a bus pass and help take some of that pressure off the city that's passed this bus pass program, right? So we can do some cost sharing in that sense. Next slide, please. I mentioned the promoting sustainability earlier, the rural versus urban students. As mentioned, those students that don't get to experience public transportation because they live outside of the area will have that opportunity when they're at their school that's within that distance for the public transportation availability. And for me as a teacher trying to talk about this, it's embedded in all of our curriculum documents in Ontario, sustainability, environmental impact, and that sort of thing. So it helps students gain context around those environmental needs, their choices for transportation. So the example I give often in my previous role, I was a shop teacher, so technology education teacher for 12 years. And, the vehicle of choice for most teenagers in our area is, a 20-year-old diesel pickup truck with a smokestack coming out the box of the truck, right? And we need to help provide opportunities that teaches our students, our young people, that that's not something to strive towards, especially if you're not hauling anything. That's not the vehicle of choice to drive around if you're expecting to have, a clean planet to live in for the next, portion of your life. And then finally, helping the economy from a student perspective, it provides access for students to get to those part-time jobs. Everywhere across our country, across North America, are experience, job opportunities that are going unfilled. And a lot of those jobs could be filled by our young people, our high school students. And many of them rely on parents driving them to and from their part-time jobs, and they're not getting on the bus and accessing public transportation. So if we have a transit pass program that, we, like Dan has done in Kingston, we train those students on how to use it, and then they feel comfortable and they feel better about the impact that they're lessening on the environment. They're going to be taking that public transit whenever they can. And then the final point is that access to jobs means greater understanding of society, greater experiences with different people, and hopefully increased confidence in that student, right? COVID has played its part on our young people for sure. So there's a lot of anxiety issues and things for students to deal with. So being able to get out there, ride with people you don't know, have conversations and embed yourself in society is a really important skill that a lot of our young people are lacking right now. So the public transit pass just really provides an opportunity for kids to get back to being kids and become a teenager and grow as a teenager into a young adult and do it responsibly while riding the bus and get to know people. So I think it's a great thing. I'm looking forward to continuing to partner with Dan and move our current pass program forward with the city of Belleville. So thanks for having me.
Thanks again, Sean, and congrats again on your advocacy and the movement in your community. And now back to Kingston, just down the 401. I see a couple students nodding there. This is what I've been waiting for the whole time. I've been so excited. Maeve and Josh, two students, a grade 9 student, Josh, and a grade 12 student at Bay Ridge Secondary School. They're going to share, just watch your mic there. You might have to have mic on, guys, is to share from a student perspective the value of the program it's created for them and their classmates. Take it away.
Hi all, I'm Maeve. I'm a grade 12 student at Bay Ridge in Kingston. And so being a grade 12 student with my bus pass has allowed me to balance school, extracurriculars, and work. And this really wouldn't be possible without my bus pass. My bus pass has provided me with security for knowing that I'll always have a safe ride to and from work. And in addition, the bus pass for high school students has made access to extracurriculars and learning opportunities possible. Speaking from my personal experience, I'm a member of the Ultimate Frisbee team, and my whole team was able to travel to our tournaments and games using the Kingston bus pass. In the classroom, many of our classes this year have gone on field trips using the bus. So for example, we were able to attend the Kingston Film Festival with my English class. And finally, as an environmental specialist high skills major student, I was able to complete my enrichment activity at Queen's University using my bus pass. As the eco minister of my school, when I take the bus, I'm proud to know that I'm making a positive choice to minimize my personal impact on the environment. And then to conclude, without my bus pass, some of the most influential experiences and learning opportunities for me would have not been accessible without my bus pass.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to top that, but I had a job filming a local hockey team's games, and it was good to have the bus in my back pocket. I even have my bus pass here today. In case I couldn't be driven to the games, I would always just take the bus to and from my games, and that would really help me. I also used the bus to get to and from school daily, and I know many of my fellow classmates do as well. It also makes it easier to hang out with friends. I've taken public transit many times to get to various places to hang out with friends. Having the transit card really gives me freedom and helps me become more independent. It also allows me to see my friends wherever and whenever I want, which is essential for young and older teenagers. The training also is really helpful because, funny story, one time my friend who didn't go to training day because he wasn't there, he was sick, he tried to get on the bus through the back doors instead of the front doors, but I helped him get on properly as I was there during training day. Training day helps students understand rules and safety on the bus they would otherwise have to learn on their own, and it only took 20 minutes. And this one gets said a lot, but again, it's the more people on public transportation means fewer cars on the road, which means less emissions and traffic. And let's face it, who doesn't want less traffic? Another thing is that it also, like Maeve was saying, it does help to get to extracurriculars. Like I'm part of the Bay Ridge Computer Specialist program, and we went on a trip to Queen's University, like the campus, to go see I can't remember what it was exactly, but it was some research thing that they're doing. The fourth year students were displaying their video game creations that they had done. So we collectively all took the 502, which is a bus that goes from Bay Ridge to downtown. We went there and we had a blast. Overall, this program has really helped me. And I can't wait to see it reach out to other communities across Canada and the world.
Maeve and Josh, thank you so much for taking the time and taking a little bit of time. I think you had to get out of class for this. So I really appreciate this time of year, getting ready for exams and taking this time and knowing, look at the panel we're on from across Canada, your voice thank you for providing your voices. Up next, Vivica Ellis is the Executive Director of the Center for Family Equity, and she'll speak to her efforts to reform public transit access in British Columbia, as well as the critical link between free youth transit and equity. Vivica.
You're still on mute, Vivica. You have to unmute yourself.
There we go. Apologies. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here. The Centre for Equity addresses family poverty in British Columbia through research, policy recommendations, legal action, and targeted programs. And we're a community-based organization that sources all of our strategic initiatives and campaigns from communities that are currently in poverty to really meet their best needs in terms of their lived experience. Next slide, please. Back in a different role with the BC Poverty Reduction Coalition, we started a campaign called All on Board. I'll get into that in a minute. But the center that's led to the point we're at today, one of our main campaigns at the Center for Family Equity is Transit for Teens. Previous work led to a large win in British Columbia. In September 2021, the province rolled out the Get On Board program, which now provides free transit for all children 0 to 12 in the entire province. So that's all of the transit systems under BC Transit, which is most of the province, and then our large TransLink system in Metro Vancouver, which has the 21 municipalities and the Tsawwassen First Nations. So this program lays a universal foundation. It's universally accessible. There's no income testing. There's no discounted pass. Universally free, all transit systems and all youth under age 12. Next slide, please. In 2020 and 2021, we were one of 4 community partners invited to participate in a City of Vancouver affordable transit fare pilot project. It was a partnership where we had 100 free transit passes that were provided to low-income residents for 6 months. And we recruited women living in transition shelters, low-income youth, multi-generational households to look at the removal of mobility poverty from low-income communities and low-income families, and look at the impact of that on low-income residents in the city. Next slide, please. So what we heard has led to the campaign that we have up and going here in BC with an enormous amount of momentum. The parents of the youth in the study were the most vocal of all the participants that we engaged. For low-income youth, and one of the main criteria for participation in the study was that none of the families had access to cars or other forms of transportation. So what we heard from the low-income youth, many of them living far, far below the poverty line on disability and income assistance, or their parents working precariously, was increased access to activities across the board. Their parents talked about the impact on their mental health. They were able to get everywhere they needed to go without the stigmatizing reality of having to steal rides or miss out, as the youth so beautifully articulated the importance of being able to be with their friends, not be left out or left behind, getting to work. They talked a lot about the sense of inclusion, and I think many speakers have touched on that beautifully today, that community belonging, that you can get where you need to go, you're not left out, you're not left behind, and the freedom to thrive. So we heard from LGBTQ youth who were able to join a youth group in a neighboring community that they really wanted to be in. We heard from parents about youth who were able to access their counselors and their mental health supports. And we are also very much taking an access to school approach here in BC with this. So, we've heard from low-income families who have to choose sometimes which student gets to school, which of their children gets to school and which doesn't. And so we heard across the board that for youth who often struggle to get to school in the program, having the free pass was huge. Next slide, please. And also we did publish a brief report on that pilot, and you can on the impact on the youth in the pilot, so you can access that if you'd like through our website. So here's our sum of the diverse impacts of free transit for youth. It upholds the right of all youth to access school, removes barriers to social services and supports. We're working very closely with the large charities and organizations that serve at-risk and marginalized youth in the province. Many of them have endorsed the campaign. They have to provide tickets for youth to get back to the homeless shelter every day, or to get back to the food bank. So we were looking at, looking at transit as public infrastructure, public good. With the provincial investment, we relieve all of the charities and nonprofits that have to have those large budget lines for transit so that youth can access the services, which we do pump millions of dollars into in the province. It promotes active transportation for youth. That's absolutely essential, whether you combine your transit youth with a skateboard or a bike or a scooter, all of that for health and fitness and long-term health outcomes. It impacts here in BC our Clean BC mandate around clean transportation, our climate justice targets, build sustainable transit users for life, and as I think others have articulated, really promotes sustainable communities and whole communities with nobody excluded. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of campaign history, and for anybody that's interested, please dig in on our website. The All On Board campaign was founded at the BC Poverty Reduction Coalition, very much a community mobilized initiative with many people impacted by the issue leading the way. And it was the lobbying of that campaign and that organization that really paved the way for this universal foundation that we are now advocating to the government to build on by extending the age up to age 18 for every transit system in the province. Next slide, please. We are running a very, very busy campaign here in BC. So again, we have a motion at the City of Vancouver coming up on Wednesday, an advocacy motion for the city, if it passes, to send letters to the relevant ministries with the province. We've been passing motions with school boards throughout the province. The BC School Trustees Association endorsed it. Large labor support. We've been lobbying provincial ministers and others, the Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Children and Family Development, and the Poverty Reduction Ministry, of course. And the BC Green Party officially endorsed free transit for teens and extending the Get On program in early June. So making a lot of headway here in BC, but we have a lot of ground to cover. And I'd love to say thank you right now. I don't know who's on this call, but this kind of effort is such a group effort, and there are many, many players and stakeholders and people and organizations working collectively on this, and for that, we're very grateful. Next slide, please. Just a sort of overview of some of the endorsers right now. You can see from the social services sector, labor, a lot of folks who want to, really just remove at a time of huge inflation, the cost barrier, especially for families. Next slide, please. There, this is just where we're at now. We're seeking more official endorsements. We're fundraising for the campaign. We want to take a group of youth leaders to the legislature in Victoria when school starts again in the fall. And so all of this is on the go here in BC, and I'd love to answer any questions from anybody, in any other province, and really connect about how we can establish this base foundation for youth everywhere in the country. Thank you all.
Vivica, thank you so much for your efforts. You're really making a difference, and we appreciate the time the time you took today to share. I'd like to thank all the speakers right now from coast to coast, quite literally, whose voices are adding up to this beautiful mosaic of the type of programming that is, and why it's critical for so many reasons. Now, I'd like to take a moment, if you don't mind, to introduce kind of what Get On the Bus, the Get On the Bus movement is all about. The movement aims to do what we're doing now and more, provide and support and catalyze a national conversation about the importance of youth access to public transit in our communities. We believe the conversation should encompass various perspectives, like we've heard from today: environmental, economic, educational, community, social justice, equity, diversity, accessibility. All of these lenses show that there is value. While there's already funds, existing across budgets, across institutions, across ministries at different provincial levels or other institutional levels like school boards and libraries or public health units, I think empowering and increasing the youth access to public transit can greatly benefit so many communities, so many ways in our communities. The Get On the Bus is a national movement that's driven by the desire to inspire a youth transit revolution in our communities everywhere. We understand that the timeline for implementation might vary depending on the unique characteristics of each community. However, we believe there are commonalities, and immense value can be created through this initiative. With that in mind, we're building a network of communities that are investing in youth transit education, offering youth passes, and providing resources. support, and connections to help establish their own youth programs. By developing policies and forging partnerships and providing resources, we can assist communities in creating training programs specifically tailored to youth. But we also understand the importance to have training programs for those that are doing the training. Training is a crucial component of this program, and I think we've heard it from the students and my experience too. I've witnessed firsthand in Kingston, many young individuals are not aware of the public transit procedures until someone shows them. So for a 14, a 15, 16, or 17-year-old, or quite frankly, a lot of the adults that get on the bus with me during the training sometimes, it can be intimidating, right? It's about normalizing the environment. It's about demonstrating together how we can navigate the system. Things like stopping the bus or planning for routes, ensuring for safety. Understanding these benefits are very important. But training for me goes merely beyond teaching how to use it. It also provides a narrative about why it's important. It instills in them a sense of freedom, confidence, and truthfully, what I've seen firsthand, a lifelong skill. Establishing additionally valuable connections to volunteering or employment opportunities. These are all connected to this. In Kingston, we've seen that training is not just about demonstrating the how. It's about imparting the why in a controlled environment where students can learn from one another. Recently, I came to realize that students themselves kind of train each other. I've only been there for 20 minutes, right? And just like Josh said today, they can train and help support each other grow together. Initially, I shared a personal experience with them, like the time I struggled to get my bike on the bus and how intimidating it was. But with the training we're giving and the importance of training, it encompasses many of these elements and makes it meaningful for them and provides them with tools and confidence. And this is why training is crucial. It aligns the ultimate goal of the Get on the Bus movement. We aim to support communities in taking the time to pause and reflect and utilize what I read the other day on Twitter by a doctor in her name, Elizabeth Swain. This is a time for moral imagination. You know, it's essential to assess right now where the funds are available and recognize where there is valuable being created, that it's already being created. We can invest the time and effort to build upon it. And so for those listening and everyone on the call today, starting with one school or one grade can be the beginning. But the question is, where should we start in your communities? Once again, I extend my gratitude to all of you for joining us today and contributing to this incredible story, in which it is a story that keeps on going. Burkhard, could you please take it away?
You figured after 3 years of Zoom, you figured out how to unmute yourself. Thank you to all the presenters for your presentation, the quality, and being on time too. So we have lots of time for questions, and questions have been pouring in. There have been a couple of questions on measurements, and maybe Dan can take it, maybe Wei can take it. How do you actually track the trips that children are taking?
So I can speak from Kingston quickly, if that makes sense. So the bus pass program for high school students, they all have their passes, right, guys? Josh has this there. I'm sure Maeve has hers somewhere, but that actually itself will allow for the data tracking, right? But see, this is what's unique in different communities. Different communities' fare systems could look a little differently, right? And so that's one way. The other way for younger grades, as we've said, anything under 14 in Kingston, any student or child under 14, we collect another measurement through the fact of a field trip pass. So each school, whether it be elementary or high school, because the high school program has a field trip pass, where when the teachers take their students out during the day, as described by the students, they can tap it there. So those are the two general ways that here in Kingston we do track we track student ridership.
So it's actually an electronic tap, right? There is an electronic measurement to it.
Yeah, but it does depend on communities, and this is the part of the conversation that we should be having. And measurement is very important, right? So I'm not sure if anyone else has another way there.
Wait, do you want to comment on that maybe?
Yeah, so in our technology roadmap, we basically had dumb buses from the 1970s up until 7 years ago. And the most important thing we did first was we put AVLS, automatic vehicle location, on the buses. And what that means is when you bring up the transit app, it's actually pretty accurate now when the bus is actually going to come, and on Google or transit app. But that also means that we have this great data visualization where we can show, because we have sensors as a part of that on the front door and the back door, and you board at the front, just like was described by one of the students and by Josh there, and you leave at the back. We can actually see where people are getting on and getting off the bus and geolocate that with GPS. And so the boarding and alighting data lets us kind of map that out. And if you tie that to next to a school, and especially at a time, oh, wow, look, we have a lot of people getting on the bus at these 3 stops around Dartmouth High School at 2:30, 3 o'clock. And I think that's important because while we're moving toward pay by tap and having that kind of data that was just described for Kingston, the goal, I think, for most transit systems is get to being able to have what's called open tap. You can just pay with your debit card and not have to have change on. And so those two bits of data need to be looked at together to really understand what's happening in your system.
All right. I think that's a good answer. Thank you. Here's a good one. In Kingston and Halifax, if you provide free transit for under 12, and do these children need to travel with an adult or another fair paying person?
Nope, not for us. What's it like in Kingston, Dan?
No, and actually 14 and under for free in Kingston. It was 12, but they bumped it up a couple grades because our high school kind of gets that cusp, that pass there. So again, no, it doesn't tie into that. In fact, when they removed the barrier or the costing of under 14, it was basically because the revenue was low for students coming in. It was more about to encourage young families to use the bus, and then the adult would pay, right? So that was kind of that. It wasn't necessarily free. It was about that encouragement, I think,
All right, thank you. And I hadn't heard the term dumb bus before, so that's a new one for me. Thank you.
Well, the new buses are very high tech and old buses are very not.
All right. And by the way, Maeve, congratulations on being the eco minister in your high school. I'll nominate you to run for prime minister one day. Here's a good one. And we certainly see that in Toronto with the Toronto Transit Commission, or TTC, who significantly reduced services as a result of COVID and reduced ridership. What happens to a program such as yours in Kingston and Halifax if the transit agencies reduce services? Why don't you start then, and maybe Ray can pitch in too.
Well, I do work for the school board, so I don't work for Kingston Transit. I mean, so far today, there hasn't been a lot of change in our system, right? Josh, Maeve, have there been bus changes around your school?
When COVID hit, I know at first they reduced the amount of buses they were sending out on routes. Like they went to from a half an hour to an hour schedule, and that's still in effect, but to a less of a degree. And the only time they take it off is during school hours. When school starts and when school ends, they'll bring it back down to 30 minutes. But usually across the day, smaller routes that aren't express routes are usually brought down to an hour.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and one really critical thing with any transit system is good service, reliable service. And right, that's something we always have to balance, not just bums and seats, which we're trying to do, but making sure we're not sacrificing the service, because you kind of need both. It's a chicken and egg game.
Yeah, frequency and reliability is critical. That's what drives, so we have an example in Halifax where we took a low performing bus off of the waterfront that literally only had about 25 people a day, but it was politically important, whatever, and we put it on the number 7 route that services the north end and comes all the way down into the south end where the universities are. And the ridership on that route, which already was very busy, went up 21%. It was like 1,500, 2,000 new riders a day, because we added an extra bus, and instead of having 12 or 15-minute headways, it went to 10 and 7-minute headways. So we know that happens. As far as the death spiral, yes, we're all really worried about that, but it's a part of the great graying out, right? We have problems in parks, in libraries, in police, and fire, in streets, public works, everywhere, and bus and ferry operations in Halifax. So we're recruiting like crazy, we're training like crazy. We just signed a new agreement with the union. They're going to get a nice pay increase every year for the next 5 years. Part of it is the violence against the operator piece. Is by the end of the fall, we'll have installed something I think this is horrible, because I've been taking the bus since I was 12, and you'd say hi to the bus operator and you'd know them. And now they're all going to be behind a rigid plexiglass screen to keep them safe, right? And that's what has to happen, because we can't keep having violence against the operators. But we think all these things combined and the recruitment, we should be able to train back up and get to a point that we can offer full service. And we actually want to expand our service. We want to do bus rapid transit and invest about $750 million. And we need a lot of drivers for that. So it's something we're all working on across the country all the time. But I think the main driver is just people retiring.
Okay, thank you. And thank you also for making that comment about the violence in transit authorities. Certainly being in Toronto, frontline news all the time. and actually making the analogy, look at even those communities that don't have these five have the same issue, right? So this is not a demographic or a situation can be blamed on that. Questions are coming in. What were some of the biggest barriers for you when trying to establish these partnerships and change the culture using public transportation? I want to pick on Sean first because you just did it most recently, and maybe tell us what were some of the bigger barriers you had.
I don't know how well I can answer this, but from my standpoint, I think when a program doesn't exist, what I found was being able to access the right people to have the conversations that are needed. So the program, I guess, itself was kind of put on my plate from my superintendents with our school board and asked me to look into it because, a lot of it stems from, co-op students that I support and apprenticeship students that I support, and those students needing to get to their placements and so on and so forth, and looking at it from a cost savings perspective initially. So I reached out to the city of Belleville and had a pretty vague response. But they had been working on it in the background already prior to me and the school board actively kind of trying to engage them. So it's something that they had been thinking about. And kind of a funny story is one of our counselors is a former student of mine, and has actively been trying to get a program started in the city for quite some time. And he's a local business owner, runs a bicycle store in the community. So, is an advocate for sustainable transportation and all those great things. And really his focus is on engaging youth in all good things, providing opportunities in small rural communities like ours for students to get started and feel ready and able to access jobs and access volunteerism and all of those things. So they were already working on it in the background. So I think and I'm speaking on behalf of our school board, was really the beneficiary of his work happening before I started engaging with Dan and then reaching out and all of those things. So as Dan and I were connecting to kind of collaborate and figure out what is the letter going to look like, how are we going to communicate with council, it actually kind of passed in the meantime. So we were kind of like, oh, well, that's great. So what's our next step? So, in a nutshell, I would say the hardest part is getting started and having conversations with the, transit workers, like whoever's your manager of your transit, getting them to actually come and talk to you. Because what I found, I'm a teacher, I work in a central role, but I'm a teacher. They don't really necessarily want to talk to me. They're happy to talk to superintendents and directors of education and, the managing people that are above me. But oftentimes it's people like myself that work in these coordinator type positions that are tasked with actually getting the work done. So it's a little bit of juggling. We're asked to do it, but they don't actually want to talk to us. So it's, navigating the people delivering the project and the people above me that want the project for our students. So
Vivica, what is your experience? What's the biggest challenge for you?
Well, I just wanted to say that I appreciate 100% the approach and what's been elaborated on here and shared with those of us in other provinces from all of you, Dan and Sean, especially around the importance of education and changing the culture. So here in BC, the approach that we're taking, we have our new program 2021, free for youth up to age 12. But you can't roll out a big program like that without the impetus, the culture change, the shifting of the behavior and the education. So it's going well. But this is why we want to link the free transit for youth to our education systems, which is why we're going to school boards throughout the province to have this discussion with the trustees around a greater vision around climate change, climate justice, education around our behavior in our school systems, married with our active transportation mandate and anti-poverty efforts to embed that training and that culture shift in our education system. So I just think that vision that you shared here is it's extremely inspiring. And that's precisely what we know we have to do here to make it happen, because we could roll out a program, but we won't have the riders and we won't have that culture shift unless we just root it in our education system. The high schools where I live over here, where my son goes, there is a lineup of SUVs dropping off 16-year-olds at a high school in Vancouver. So we also have to get to the parents. And I think I'd love to just say before I end here that two student speakers, you both spoke so eloquently, so passionately, so beautifully tonight. I mean, you are deeply inspiring, every word you said, and I think that I can see how youth can train youth, and we can, and really, but just that's what we'd like to accomplish here, what you've shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. We're getting to the end, and I want to take maybe one more question and then wrap it up. And there have been a couple of questions here about costs, right? One of the questions was, do you actually have a breakdown on the funding for this program? How much is coming from the province, perhaps? How much the municipality is contributing? How much is the school board? I'm not sure if we can answer for all three of you in the few minutes we have left. But maybe Dan, give me a sense of just big picture. How is the Kingston program being funded?
Oh, it was a handshake deal, I can tell you that much, right? And so with that being said, council, City of Kingston foregoes some revenue, but with paid, the school boards chip in, I think a total of $60,000 between us and our coterminous Catholic board. So there is a chip in there. And with that being said, you know, what we've seen is in Ontario, at least, there's also an attachment with growing ridership to gas tax funds, you know, so that's where it is in Kingston right now. But I heavily suggest we keep on looking at this for all the benefits we're giving. How much do we spend for, you know, climate change or youth mental wellness or local, you know, employment programs? I think really by looking at a breadth and seeing the value it creates of moving people in a car-centric world, that's what we've created, right? So connecting opportunity connects to community. And so I can break down if we want to connect regarding the local stuff here in Kingston, but I think it's really, we have to also look beyond where are we spending money and where is this creating value that we can use money for.
All right, thank you for that. Maybe one last quick question and then we have to wrap it up. Is anyone doing any education on this for student teachers through some teacher education programs?
We are now.
We are now.
Yeah. I haven't heard of that, but Sean, maybe you're also in the education system. Have you heard of anything? Or maybe that's a great idea that we learned just right now.
I would say so. I know that for the first time ever, I was asked by a principal to come in and have kind of a lunch and learn at one of our secondary schools around, you know, the portfolios that I work with about co-op and OYAP, right? So for, you know, a geography teacher candidate, they know nothing about Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, even though they're supposed to know about all pathways. So I think this is, you know, another opportunity like that where you can get in front of people that would not learn about it until they would end up in, you know, a co-op department or something like that. So yeah, I think that's a great question / suggestion for us now, Dan.
Can I, Burkhard, can I hijack the last 30 seconds? May I?
Go ahead.
To go back to the money question, and some people were asking, you know, how do we make the political conditions happen? How do we find the money? How do we get council to be willing to do this? How do we get, and the answer is on a municipal level, it doesn't take a lot to scare a councillor, like 10 people who they see around their neighborhood, who they meet at the Tim Hortons or local coffee shop, emailing them or calling them being mad about something. So my advice is get organized a year to 18 months before the next municipal election, have a proposal or a demand that we want these things to happen in transit, make them sign off on it, you know, have a list of here's all the politicians who agreed with us that you should vote for, don't vote for the other ones. And then once they get elected, hold them to account and make sure they do it. And the power of civil society to move, like this is how we got in Halifax the climate action tax and raised taxes 4.6% to fund climate change is I helped and 2 other councillors helped civil society bully the rest of council into funding it. And they're all very vulnerable. They will do it, right? So you've got to be really active and you got to really force the issue. Get different councillors if your councillors won't fund it.
Thank you, Wei. And I still remember with awe the fact that you guys got this carbon climate tax involved at the municipal level. Congratulations. Okay, we need to wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Also, a big thank you to the McConnell Foundation out of Montreal, who has provided us a grant that allows us to engage Dan and to produce various products. We're in the middle of producing a train-to-trainer guide. That's a tool that allows others in other municipalities and school boards to use the experience of Dan and others in training the students. As we heard today, training is a critical element. I also want to say that we're here to help. If there's anything that you need in trying to make this work, give us send us an email, info@smallchangefund.ca. We are here to help. We're also looking for continuous support. For example, one of the projects that we're trying to fund is a cost-benefit analysis. And these things are unfortunately expensive. But the question of cost is almost always the first question that someone asked me when we go into a community and present this idea, how much it's going to cost us. And what we want to do is actually do a cost benefit analysis, a really rigorous one. $1 in is to how many dollars out. So we continue to look for support, financial support and donations. You can go online to Small Change Fund or let us know how we can help. This concludes our webinar. I want to thank all the presenters for sharing their stories, for being inspirational, and thank you for joining us today.